There is a woman he cannot name, though he feels her in the marrow of his bones. She is not always present in his waking life, yet she haunts him in dreams, in moments of silence, in the space between his words. She is the one who does not bend, the one who does not rush to soothe his ego, the one who carries her own fire as though the flame itself were her skin. Carl Jung would call her an archetype, a living symbol, an eternal pattern within the unconscious. She is not simply a woman but a mirror, a figure who awakens in him the dormant forces of his anima, the feminine soul buried deep in his psyche. And it is this awakening that terrifies him, because it pulls him beyond control, beyond dominance, into the raw truth of his incompleteness. The men of the world, in their surface desires, believe they long for possession, for the woman they can master, for the love that obeys them. But in their hidden depths, in the silent architecture of the psyche, there lives a hunger far more dangerous, the hunger for the woman they cannot tame. She represents the chaos of eros, the mystery of the unknown, the force that no strategy, no cleverness, no power can ever subdue. You know this truth. You have seen in his eyes when he grows restless, when his certainty begins to fracture under your silence. You have felt it in the way his voice shifts when you step beyond the familiar script he has prepared for you. The obsession begins not when you chase him, not when you plead for his affection, but when you reveal, quietly and without apology, that you do not need him to complete you. For the ego of a man, this is unbearable. Jung wrote that the ego resists anything that threatens his control, but the unconscious, the unconscious longs for dissolution, for surrender into the greater whole. And so he is torn. His surface self fights to keep dominance, while his deeper self hungers for the very loss of control you embody. This is a paradox that drives him mad. He wants you most when he cannot contain you. Consider the woman who becomes the mirror of his shadow. She does not coddle his pride. She does not shrink to protect him from himself. Instead, she reveals through her independence, through her quiet refusal to collapse, that he is not as whole, not as sovereign, not as invulnerable as he pretends to be. This is a feminine as mirror, not of what he already knows, but of what he cannot bear to face. And it is here, in this unbearable confrontation, that obsession is born. You see, obsession is not love. Love expands, breathes, makes room for freedom. Obsession contracts, suffocates, coils itself around the object of desire. But obsession is also an initiation. It is the psyche's way of forcing a man to confront his fragmentation, to awaken him to the deeper forces at play. The woman he cannot control becomes the initiator. She holds the key not because she gives herself to him, but because she withholds the easy victory his ego craves. She is the gatekeeper to his shadow, to his anima, to the unknown. This is why he circles you like prey, why he both fears and desires your presence. It is not about you as a person. It is about the archetype you embody. You are the flame he cannot grasp without burning, the ocean he cannot drink without drowning, the night sky he cannot measure without losing himself in its infinity. And when you understand this, you stop wondering why he clings, why he grows restless, why he cannot forget. You see the pattern for what it is. His obsession is not a reflection of your word alone, but the archetypal role you are playing in his psychic drama. But here is the danger. If you collapse into his control, if you hand him the keys to his own comfort, the spell breaks. The obsession dissolves, and you are no longer the mirror of his unconscious. You become the possession, the object, the conquered prize. And so the archetype retreats, the hunger fades, and he begins his restless search again. The woman he cannot control is not simply a lover. She is a threshold. She calls him into the storm of his own becoming. She awakens what Jung called individuation, the process of facing the shadow, integrating the anima and becoming whole. But few men have the courage to walk that path. Most would rather circle endlessly, feeding their obsession, than step fully into the fire you hold. And so the question turns to you. Will you hold your ground? Will you embody the archetype, not as performance, but as truth? Will you refuse to be swallowed by his ego, even as he tries to bind you to his will? For obsession is not your prison. It is his initiation. He sees her walk through the room, and suddenly the walls of his carefully built kingdom tremble. His ego, so accustomed to dominance, to ownership, to certainty, meets an archetype he cannot hold. She is not merely a woman. She is an energy. She is a reminder of what he cannot govern, the reflection of the anima that sleeps in his own unconscious, forever reaching for him through shadow. The obsession archetype does not seduce with loud proclamations or needy gestures. She seduces with absence, with silence, with the unbearable mystery of being untamed. She refuses to bend, and in doing so, she calls forth the part of him that must confront his own lack of sovereignty. For the man, it feels like hunger. It feels like fire. It feels like the air has become scarce, and only her presence can restore it. But beneath the surface of his craving lies a deeper truth. She is the mirror he does not want to face. Every projection of desire he places upon her is, in truth, an echo of what he has repressed within himself. She is not just a woman across the room. She is the silhouette of his unlived potential, his unclaimed sensitivity, his suppressed vulnerability. She awakens the anima, and with it, the terror that he has been half alive all along. You, the woman who carries this archetype, must understand. His obsession is not about you. It is about what you represent. You are the forbidden garden, the locked door, the dream he cannot dominate. His desire is not love. It is the ego's desperate negotiation with its own annihilation. And the more you resist his control, the more violently his psyche clings to your shadow. This is why he cannot stop thinking of you. Why, even in the arms of another, he feels restless, unsatisfied, incomplete. He has tasted the mystery of feminine presence that refuses to be reduced, and it has awakened the very thing he most fears. A woman who cannot be conquered is a mirror that forces him to confront the hollowness of conquest itself. In Jung's language, this is the dance of projection. He casts his inner anima onto you, mistaking your reality for the dream within him. But projection cannot be sustained forever. The more he projects, the more the illusion collapses, and the more dangerous his hunger becomes. For obsession is not love. It is possession turned inward, the ego's frantic attempt to hold what was never his. You have seen this before. The lingering stare across the table. The sudden silence when you pull away. The message at midnight that reads not like affection, but like desperation disguised as charm. You feel it in the air, the weight of his unspoken question. Why can't I own you? Why won't you bend? And still, you do not bend, because deep within you, there is a memory older than time, a knowing that you are not here to be possessed, but to reveal. You are the fire that burns away his illusions, the untamed force that confronts him with his own incompleteness. To submit to control would not only diminish you, it would also deny him the chance to awaken. So the dance continues. He pursues, you resist. He craves, you remain mystery. And in the space between, something far greater than desire unfolds, a war between the ego and the soul, fought in the silence of longing. There is a strange ache that lives inside a man when he encounters a woman who will not bend to his will. It is not the ache of love in its gentle, nurturing form, but the sharp sting of his ego clashing against something unyielding, something that will not break. Jung understood this conflict as an archetypal collision, the masculine principle of control meeting the feminine principle of mystery. It is here, in this battlefield, that obsession is born. Control is the ego's oldest weapon. A man uses it not only to command his external world, but to quiet the chaos within himself. To control a woman is to believe he has mastered his own insecurities, his own restless shadow. Yet when he meets the woman who slips through the net of possession, who cannot be caged or predicted, his illusion begins to fracture. Suddenly, he is reminded of the abyss within himself, the places he has not yet touched, the wounds he has never dared to open. This is why the woman he cannot control becomes unforgettable. She is not merely a lover or a fleeting muse. She is a mirror of all he has refused to face. Each time she resists the roles he assigns her, each time she remains sovereign in her own energy, he is pulled deeper into the labyrinth of his own shadow. The mystery of her being forces him into confrontation with his anima, the feminine within himself that he has denied or suppressed. And yet, the more he tries to grasp her, the more elusive she becomes. It is like holding smoke in his hands. What he thought was solid dissolves into nothingness, and the nothingness drives him mad. The paradox consumes him. He desires her presence, but her independence intoxicates him more than any surrender could. To the woman who embodies this archetype, there is no need to perform. Her power does not lie in overt rebellion, nor in games of seduction, but in her refusal to collapse into the smallness of control. She understands that when she holds her center, when she chooses self-respect over validation, she awakens something raw and uncontainable in him. But here is the danger. Obsession is not love. It is the ego's desperate hunger disguised as devotion. The man who obsesses is not yet seeing the woman for who she is. He is seeing only the projection of what she awakens in him. Jung would say he is trapped in the grip of anima projection, unable to distinguish between the living woman before him and the archetype she symbolizes. Still, the pull is undeniable. He circles her like a restless hunter, both drawn to her freedom and threatened by it. And the more he realizes he cannot control her, the deeper the hunger grows. This hunger is not for her body, though desire is its mask. It is for the part of himself she forces him to meet. The woman who cannot be controlled is the threshold between his shallow comfort and his deepest transformation. She is both the wound and the cure, both the storm and the silence after. And until he faces the truth of what she represents within him, she will haunt him like a dream he cannot wake from. Control is the illusion that men cling to because they fear the chaos within themselves. Jung knew this. What terrifies a man is not truly the woman in front of him, but the way she mirrors the untamed wilderness of his own unconscious. Her silence, her refusal to bow, her refusal to be tamed, this is not defiance for its own sake. It is a living reminder of everything he has suppressed, buried, and denied. The woman he cannot control becomes a mirror, and in that reflection, he does not see her alone. He sees himself. He sees the hunger he cannot admit, the tenderness he does not allow, The vulnerability he has armored over with pride. She is the anima, the feminine soul he lost in the process of becoming a man in a world that worships domination. When she stands before him, unyielding, radiant, he confronts not her power, but his own incompleteness. And so, obsession grows. Because obsession is not love. It is the attempt to grasp what one does not understand. It is the fever of the ego when it realizes it has no mastery over the forces that shape desire. He cannot control her, so he tries to consume her. He cannot bind her, so he watches her endlessly in his mind, hoping that by replaying her gestures, her glances, her words, he might unravel the mystery that refuses to be named. But mystery is not solved. Mystery is endured. Mystery is surrendered to. This is where his ego collapses, because surrender is the one act he has never learned. The man raised to conquer cannot bow to feminine without feeling death breathe down his neck. Yet it is only in this death, the death of control, that he might actually come alive. And you, listening now, you may have seen it. The way his eyes search for you, the way his voice stumbles, the way his anger sparks not because you wronged him, but because you did not obey the silent script he wrote for you in his mind. He does not crave you because you submit. He craves you because you resist. He craves you because you are the reminder that he does not yet know himself. This is the heart of the obsession archetype. The man is not addicted to you. Not really. He is addicted to the self that awakens in your presence, the self he cannot command. And so he circles you like a moth around fire, both terrified and spellbound. There is a reason myths across civilizations tell of goddesses who never bowed. Artemis roamed the forest untouched by possession, her freedom making kings tremble. Kali's fire devoured illusions, her presence unbearable to men who clung to control. These archetypes whisper the same eternal truth. The woman who cannot be subdued becomes the axis around which men's obsessions turn. In Jung's language, such women embody the anima in its rawest form, untamed, primal, autonomous. She is not molded by projection, but instead confronts it. When a man projects his fantasies upon her, she does not bend to embody them. She lets his illusions fall like fragile glass. And in the shattering, he confronts himself. His desire becomes a mirror of his own unconscious. And in the abyss of that reflection, obsession is born. This is why he cannot forget her. Because she is not simply a woman. She is the embodiment of his own shadow, dressed in flesh and voice. She awakens what is long buried. The hunger for freedom, the terror of abandonment, the unhealed wounds of his childhood, the longing for a love that cannot be possessed. She becomes a living paradox, the temptation of closeness and the threat of dissolution. And that paradox is intoxicating. But here lies a secret no man wishes to admit. It is not her beauty that binds him, nor her kindness, nor even her intimacy. It is her refusal to be controlled. The very boundaries she sets, the silence she holds when he demands answers, the distance she maintains when he seeks to conquer. These are the things that burn themselves into his psyche. Because in the refusal, he discovers the edges of his own limits. In her no, he encounters the abyss of his own fragility. You, listening now, may have wondered why his memory clings to you like smoke long after you walked away. You may have questioned why he returns, again and again, with restless eyes and trembling hands. It is because you awaken in him something larger than love. You awaken confrontation with his own shadow. He cannot dominate you, and therefore he cannot dominate himself. His craving is not for your body, but for the part of himself he cannot claim without you. And yet, the danger is always there. Obsession is not devotion. It is not love. It is hunger disguised as worship. It is control dressed as desire. When he says he cannot live without you, he is not confessing eternal loyalty. He is revealing his unfinished war with himself. His need to possess you is the mask his ego wears to avoid the truth, that it is his own soul he longs for, and it is his own soul that terrifies him. This is why the feminine must remain sovereign. To surrender sovereignty for the illusion of love is to become devoured, to collapse into projections and lose your shape. But to stand untouchable and whole is to awaken both fear and reverence. You become in his eyes both the wound and the cure. And while he may call it obsession, what he truly feels is the weight of encountering the eternal feminine within himself. There is a secret that few dare to acknowledge. Men often fall most deeply in love with a woman who awakens in them both longing and frustration. She is not the one who hands over her soul too easily, nor the one who vanishes into endless games. She is the paradox, near enough to be touched, yet vast enough never to be possessed. Her presence is not a gift to be owned. It is a mirror in which he sees his own hunger, his own shadow, his own desire for transcendence. This is why the obsession archetype burns so hotly in the psyche. It is not about her body, not even about her heart, but about what she unlocks inside of him. She summons the repressed parts of his masculinity, the wildness, the vulnerability, the chaos he has buried beneath duty and pride. She forces his ego to wrestle with the rawness of wanting something that cannot be bent to his will. She exposes a fracture between the man he pretends to be and the man he actually is. And you must understand, this is not cruelty. It is not a power game, though he may accuse you of playing one. This is archetypal. It is ancient. In myth, the goddess always stood beyond the reach of the conqueror. The knight could slay dragons, ride into wars, win kingdoms. But when he approached the sacred feminine, he found himself trembling, not because she wielded a sword, but because she carried silence, mystery, and an inner world that could not be charted. Every man, in his unconscious, yearns for this. He may not admit it. He may curse it. But his psyche is wired to respond to the woman, who does not flatten herself into something manageable. His anima, the inner feminine that lives inside him, demands to be met through a woman who is not a reflection of his ego, but a disruption of it. And that disruption is obsession. You have seen it in their eyes. The way a man who thought himself unshakable suddenly grows restless. He texts, he waits, he obsesses. He searches for signs, rereads your words, questions your silences. Not because you played a trick, but because his unconscious has recognized that here, finally, is something real, something he cannot tame, something he cannot reduce. And yet, this obsession is dangerous for him. For to stand before the woman he cannot control is to face the death of his illusions. Many retreat, many run, some attack. But the rare ones, the ones who are truly ready, will choose instead to die to their false selves. They will allow the ego to shatter, the shadow to rise, the anima to bloom. These are the men who are reborn in the fire of your mystery. And you, do you see the weight of this role? You are not just the object of desire. You are the mirror of his unconscious. You awaken what has slept in him for years. You are both temptation and initiation. You are not there to soothe him, nor to mother him, nor to give him everything he demands. You are there to hold your ground, to remain rooted in your own sovereignty, and to let him decide whether he will rise or collapse. The man who once imagined himself master her is now prisoner of his own projections. Every time she turns her gaze away, every time she leaves him in silence rather than in explanation, he feels a strange terror coil in his chest. It is not her body that binds him, not her beauty alone. It is the abyss she awakens in him, the place where control dissolves and desire becomes raw vulnerability. In the language of Jung, she is no longer merely a woman. She had become the vessel of his anima, the doorway to the hidden feminine within his own psyche. And because he cannot integrate this energy, because he cannot claim it as his own, he clings to her with a desperation he does not understand. She becomes both salvation and torment, goddess and ghost. He obsesses because she reveals to him a part of himself he has always feared, his powerlessness before the eternal feminine. The more he tries to grasp her, the more she slips away. Like water through clenched fists, her freedom mocks his control. Yet it is this very slipping, this very refusal to be owned, that deepens his fixation. He does not realize that what he truly craves is not her compliance, but his own wholeness. He yearns for what she reflects, his disowned softness, his unlived longing, his capacity for surrender. But in his blindness, he imagines that capturing her will heal him. And so he circles endlessly, chasing a shadow that was never hers but his all along. And you, yes, you listen now, must understand this. When you remain rooted in yourself, when you refuse to shrink into the mold he offers, you become the mirror he cannot shatter. You awaken in him the truth that control is an illusion, that love cannot be managed like property. That obsession is born when a man collides with soul he cannot cage. It is not cruelty that ignites his hunger. It is your authenticity. It is not games that make him chase. It is a mystery of your refusal to betray your own depth. For the woman he cannot control is the woman who has already married her own shadow, who has danced with her own wounds, who has bled and risen, and refused to apologize for her wholeness. She is beyond taming because she has tamed herself. And so his obsession grows, not because she withholds affection, but because she embodies a freedom he has not yet found within himself. She becomes his unsolvable riddle, his sacred haunting, his private storm. Every attempt to diminish her only expands her presence within his psyche. Every effort to command her only intensifies his awe of her unyielding soul. What he does not see, at least not yet, is that the path is not in controlling her, but in integrating the parts of himself she reflects. Until then, he remains entranced, bound not by her chains but by his own unclaimed depths. Now, let's explore one of the most paradoxical truths Jung hinted at. What a man resists in you often reveals what he fears losing control over in himself. When you express your feminine essence, your softness, your intuition, your ability to flow instead of forcing, his ego immediately feels both attracted and threatened. Why? Because the ego thrives on predictability, structure, and dominance. Feminine energy, by its very nature, is unpredictable, fluid, and deeply magnetic. This is why some men become defensive when a woman effortlessly holds their attention without trying. Their ego starts whispering, "You're losing control. She could walk away at any moment, and you would be powerless." But here's where it gets fascinating. Jung taught that the anima, the feminine within a man, always seeks to reunite with its mirror in the outside world. which means, whether he admits it or not, he craves the very thing he resists. He craves the depth, the softness, the intuitive knowing that feminine energy brings. This is why so many men can't stop thinking about the one woman who didn't beg for their attention, who didn't play the game of ego against ego, but instead stood firmly in her inner radiance. Think about it. He might meet countless women who flatter him, chase him, or compete for his time, but his memory always circles back to the one who didn't need him to validate her. That woman becomes unforgettable because she awakens something inside him, something that is both terrifying and liberating. And here's the real secret. The more you resist the temptation to shrink yourself to fit his comfort zone, the more powerful your imprint becomes. You're not just another woman. You're the mirror to his unconscious. You're the reminder of the part of himself he's not yet ready to face. That's why men can't let go, even when they tell themselves they have. It's not about attachment to you. It's about the way you activated his soul's deepest memory. The ninth step into the shadow is ego surrender and the feminine power of stillness. The ego always wants to fight, to argue, to defend its point. It thrives on noise, on reaction, on control. But true feminine power doesn't come from reaction. It comes from stillness. Stillness is not weakness. It is a capacity to stand firm in your truth without being dragged into chaos. It is the ability to let a man argue, accuse, or project his fears onto you, and you, instead of battling back, simply remain unmoved. Carl Jung often emphasized that the ego resists silence because silence exposes its fragility. The moment you don't feed someone projections with your defensive energy, they are forced to face their own shadow. And this is where your power lies. When you stop defending yourself, when you stop over-explaining, when you stop trying to prove your worth, you reclaim the energy that the ego would otherwise steal. Feminine stillness says, I don't need to fight to prove who I am. My presence speaks for itself. Think about it. How many times have you given away your energy because you couldn't stand the tension of silence? Because you needed to explain, to justify, to fix? But every time you did, you fed the ego of the other person while abandoning your own soul. Stillness is a shadow's undoing. It exposes the insecurities of those who cannot live without control. It brings the masculine ego face to face with itself. And paradoxically, it deepens attraction, because a woman who can hold stillness without fear radiates a mystery that no man can resist. In love, stillness is a silent power that bends without breaking. It's what makes him question himself, respect you more deeply, and feel an unshakable pull toward you. Because you are not playing the battlefield of the ego. You are standing in the kingdom of the soul. The final silent weapon of feminine energy is not about men at all. It's about your own awakening. Because once you fully step into the realization that your value never depended on anyone's recognition, that your worth was never tied to a man's validation, something extraordinary happens. You stop needing the power struggle. You stop craving the chase. You stop bending yourself to fit into the shape of someone else's desire. Instead, you embody the kind of quiet confidence that shakes egos without trying. You move through the world as if you already belong, because you do. And men, those who are aligned with your energy, feel it instantly. They don't want to conquer you. They want to rise beside you. The truth is, the feminine does not bend the masculine ego through manipulation, seduction, or control. She bends it through authenticity, presence, and unwavering self-worth. And when you master these silent weapons, you won't just bend a man's ego. You'll reshape the entire way you experience love, connection, and intimacy. So now the question is, are you ready to awaken this energy within yourself? If this message spoke to your soul and open your eyes to truths you've always felt deep inside, don't just let it fade away. Hit that like button so this wisdom reaches more women who need to hear it. Speech balloons, share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And your story could be the spark that inspires someone else. And if you're ready to step deeper into your feminine power, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Because each week we uncover new secrets about attraction, psychology, and the hidden forces that shape love. Remember, the moment you choose to embrace your inner feminine energy, everything around you begins to shift. And your journey starts right here with you